Welcome back, everyone. I'm the Depressed Dior, and this is Middara. Alright, we did it. We did 150 damage, or rather 151 damage to Aisling. Poison might have finished her off anyway, but also we still had... If Remy hadn't gotten the kill, I would have popped every single summon token I had to attack with Femke, and then DM would have done all of her attacks, and then Zeke would have ran up and hit her with a plank. So one way or the other, we would eventually had done that last bit of damage. Obviously, the key thing was getting the poison, which the only reason I got that on her was because of fortune telling. Otherwise, I would never had made the attempt. So yeah. Anyway, I've not done this part before, so I'm gonna probably go and listen to the recording of it after this. But for right now, we'll go to stop her, which is 140. Alright. Aisling stumbled, clutching at a gash in her side. Her fingers came away red with her own blood. She staggered, then dropped to her knees. To Remy's eyes, even defeat had not made Nightingale seem sane. The Maluma's dark form crackled around her head, turning rain to steam where it touched her armor. Though she seemed to lack strength to swing her weapon anymore, she still charged, stumbling in their direction. Teeth gnashed as she lashed out at Rook, trying in vain to shove him over the cliff. There was no shock in Rook's eyes or betrayal, only guilt as he held Nightingale back with one arm. He didn't budge. "Night, stop!" Remy shouted, desperate. "You lost. Give up." Nightingale fumbled for a dagger at a belt, drawing it in one hand. She held it out in front of herself as though she were about to swing at them. Instead, she jerked the knife towards her own throat. "No!" Remy lurched forward, but not nearly fast enough. Nightingale was too far away. Rook was ready. He smashed his other fist into Nightingale faster than she could strike. She buckled without resistance, the knife spinning away as she dropped it. "Not today, bastard. That wasn't part of the deal," Rook shouted as he secured his arms around Nightingale, holding her firmly against the wet cliff. She thrashed... one second. She thrashed and screamed against Rook's grip, scratching and biting at him in animal rage. Rook was unmoved. "How about giving us our friend back?" Patrick was on his knees beside Aisling. "Let me help you. It's not serious, but we can..." "No!" Aisling staggered to her feet, scrambling along the wet stone until she was out of reach. She scratched frantically at her satchel before finally removing the hegemonics. The artifact glowed in her hands, apparently waiting for this moment. "I can't get away with it again." "Aisling, please." Patrick scrambled up after her, hands outstretched. Please give it to me. You don't know what could happen. Just stay calm." Remy wasn't about to stop and stare. With Aisling focused on Patrick, Remy began creeping up from behind her. Creeping up on her from behind. "Don't know?" Aisling laughed, her voice shrill. Overhead, thunder roared around them, echoing off the cliff. "I've done it twice already. Jophiel will judge the guilty." Her hands worked quickly, sliding the different interlocking sections into place. The hegemonics clicked and hummed as it was manipulated, its light gradually darkening into an angry red. "You're guilty, Patrick. You and these new friends of yours." Remy charged, reaching for the hegemonics with both hands. She only had one chance. Does the party have leg wound? I think you can get this if Remy gets caught before you rendezvous with her. I think she gets a leg wound. But we don't have leg wound. So instead, continue to what to do with her. Page 133. Yeah, the page numbers kind of go all over the place here. Okay. Remy summoned every ounce of her anger to the front of her mind, not letting it fade even for a second. She saw her home in flames, heard the screams of Black Hand as they died. It would kill her friends next if she didn't do something. She tackled Aisling in the back, roaring with impotent rage. Aisling squealed in pain and surprise, and the box jerked out of her hand and over the cliff. Remy kicked off the ground and dove after it. Her wings beat in defiance of the storm, fighting back the wind. She snatched the cube out of the air before banking harshly and twisting back up to the cliff tops. She landed with the hegemonics clutched in both arms, well out of reach of the struggling Nightingale or Aisling. Aisling took one look at Remy, triumphantly clutching the last hope for escape, and started to shake. In a second, Patrick was there, offering some fresh cloth to stem the bleeding in her side. "Aisling, I think it's time to give up. You've lost." Aisling collapsed into his arms, her body limp and shivering against the cold. Patrick held her there like a child. "Shh," he soothed, walking back towards the cave. "It's okay. It'll be okay." He moved her into the cave and out of the rain, vanishing from sight. For the moment, neither Remy nor her friend seemed to care. Nightingale was still squirming, though with every passing second the Maluma's seemingly inexhaustible strength seemed to be ebbing. "What happened to her?" Remy asked. She let the Maluma have her. She let the Maluma have her body in exchange for leading us here, Rook said. "It promised to give her back once we got here. It lied." Remy covered her mouth, stomach twisting with guilt. Nightingale had been forced to attack them, had to be beaten down and restrained because of her. "Take this." Remy offered the artifact to Zeke, touching it as little as possible to avoid triggering it. "Oh, and she slung the bundle of stolen ledgers out toward him too, shaking off the worst of the water and blood. I grabbed what I could. She said she'd seen something about Theodosia in here." "Sure." Zeke packed both away. With that, Remy dropped to her knees beside Nightingale. She snarled at her, baring teeth like an animal. "Why would you do this, Nightingale? You shouldn't let it do this to you." Nightingale shuddered, then fell silent. For a few seconds she looked between them in shock, as though waking up abruptly from a nap. Her armor of slime and oil fizzed and hissed for a moment, then withdrew back into her body like a turtle into its shell. Nightingale spasmed again, though more like convulsions than trying to escape from Rook. Then she stopped and started sobbing. "She's back," Remy said, shoving Rook out of the way. "Oh God, I'm so sorry." Zeke and Rook watched nervously as Remy rushed in, embracing her tearful, shaking friend. Nightingale was more than a little banged up between losing the fight and being forcibly restrained. Her skin was bruised and bloody. Remy held her and letting Nightingale sob into her shoulder. Even after recovering enough to walk on her own, Nightingale was still pale and slow to move. She followed them back to the cave entrance, more out of habit more than any recognition of where they were going. Remy wanted to take her back to Ramstead, where Nightingale could see a medic. She wanted to find out if her father was okay, but there was something they had to do first. Patrick had a little fire going just inside the cave. Aisling was curled in front of the flames, wrapped in Patrick's jacket and bound at her wrist with thick knots. Her cleavers were now tucked away in Patrick's bag, out of reach. "I'm not saying she shouldn't face justice," Patrick said, "but nothing fair is waiting back in Ramstead." "Grace will kill me." Aisling's voice was feeble from beside the fire, and she didn't look up. "She conspires with the Black Hand. If she's the judge, I'll be dead before morning." Remy pulled Zeke's jacket close against the chill of the cave. It was better than the shredded scraps of her nightclothes. Of course, there were no openings for her wings, so she had to put it on backwards. Do those ledgers I found detail what we need to know about Theodosia?" she asked. "Yeah," Zeke muttered. He'd been flipping through them for the last 20 minutes while Nightingale recovered. "Looks like that informant found what we needed after all. Good thing, too." Zeke glanced at Nightingale, worry obvious in his face, and who could blame him, considering what she'd done? She didn't notice. Nightingale was barely even awake, lying unconscious beside the fire with her head resting on Rook's side. He remained dutifully still, watching over her. "Oh yeah?" Rook twitched once, then realized he had to dislodge the princess and just sighed. "What do they say?" Zeke thumbed through a couple of pages. Says that there's a Theodosian mage traveling with a cult here in Elenia, something called the Anointed. Last seen in Hyde. Apparently they caused some trouble there, but it's sparse on details. "Hyde," Rook grinned, suddenly excited. "That's nearby. Maybe a few, That's nearby. Maybe a couple of days if we use the right trail. We should probably leave Ramstead tonight." Remy gestured at that prisoner. "Except we have to deal with her. We can't just let her go. Not after what she did to me." I wasn't suggesting that," Patrick snapped. I wasn't going to suggest it, I mean." Remy scoffed. "Who knows how many people she hurt burning down my house? We know she's got a body count. Don't you think that informant deserves justice?" Patrick spoke slowly, cautiously. "I do. That's why I've got a better idea." He leaned back against the cave, eyes pitying as he watched Aisling shiver. We can let the king judge her. Balthazar has ruled fairly since Ilenia's founding. I think he'll be fair to Aisling as well. He was always the one she wanted to meet, and now she will." Aisling rolled sideways, glaring across the fire at them. "I screwed up, but I'm not the bad guy. Grace and Malik are the ones you should be fighting. They're the ones who brought the hegemonics here to be sold in the first place. They don't care who gets hurt, as long as they get rich." Zeke flicked a cigarette butt towards her, annoyed. "You kidnap one of us, then try to murder us? You really think we're going to buy that shit?" "The Princess Elenia had my back," Aisling snapped. "How was I supposed to know she was possessed? I thought we were doing the right thing." Patrick cleared his throat. Look, that's why my idea is the best. I take her to be judged, and you all can move on to more important things. No need to stress out about it after this. He paused for a moment, deep in thought. I need to bring the hegemonics with me. That way the king would have all the evidence he needs. He can give her a fair trial, and we can take it away from whoever its eventual buyer would be. It's nothing personal, Remy, but the Black Hand can't be trusted. Aisling is right about one thing. If she depends on their mercy for a fair trial, she'll be dead in 5 minutes. Patrick, you've been good to us, Remy began, tensing, so don't take this the wrong way. But Aisling is your friend. You won't be able to see this clearly. What you're proposing sounds more like giving her a chance to escape. If you really trust Balthazar, maybe you should trust his appointed Duchess. Patrick shook his head. Sorry, Remy. I can't say I do. But I know it isn't my decision. You all captured her. So you can be the ones to decide what happens next. So, our decisions are hand Aisling over to Patrick and let him take her to Elenia proper. Or we hand Aisling over to Grace. Needless to say, it's pretty safe to assume if we hand Aisling over to Grace, she is going to die. And since pretty much the route where you defeat Aisling through Dangerous Terrain is pretty much she falls and goes splat, I think I'll try the route where she doesn't die. Or hopefully doesn't die. So we're going to hand her over to Patrick. And safe travels Patrick 139. Alright. I can't thank you all enough. Patrick extended a grateful hand towards them. You won't regret this, I promise. Zeke fished around a moment before coming up with the hegemonic, still glowing with ever-shifting light. Patrick caught the artifact, wrapping it in cloth before lowering it reverently into his pack. I know it might be hard to see now, but you're doing the right thing. Not that hard to see, Aisling muttered. She was still tied, her wrist now attached to Patrick's belt by 10 feet of sturdy rope. My screwing up shouldn't stop the king from hearing about Ramstead. Remy gritted her teeth with displeasure, but she didn't object. She would respect her friend's decisions, even if she didn't agree with it. They'd still saved her life, after all. From just outside the cave, the storm had stopped at last. Dawn light filled the sky with pale blue, and the cliffs sparkled with moisture. It might have seemed pretty if Remy wasn't so sore. Thank you all. Patrick shook hands with each of them in turn, even Nightingale. She barely returned the gesture, looking more through him than at him. I'll catch you guys when this is done. Will you be sticking around? No, Remy answered before any of the others could, speaking so suddenly that even Nightingale was briefly roused to stare in her direction. We'll be going to hide. Hopefully something good could come from all this. All right. Patrick waved with his free hand, then pushed Aisling gently towards a winding path. Come on then, Aisling. Let's get on the road. They left down the path, disappearing into the early morning. Guess we have to have a ways to go. Zeke lit a fresh cigarette with the embers of the dwindling fire, then rose to his feet. We heading straight to hide? Remy answered before her friends could. I preferred it if we didn't. My dad deserves to know I'm okay, and Grace too. So long as we don't get separated or locked up again. Leaving Pirate Town, 138. No guards moved to stop them as they made their way across the drawbridge into Grace's palace. Here's hoping for no prison sentence in Grace's tower this time, eh? Zeke called. Remy found it hard to laugh at the joke, considering the circumstances. Nightingale seemed to be doing a little better, either from the walk or just having time to recover. I didn't get to see the tower, but you guys all got to see my house. That doesn't seem fair, Remy said. Oh, it was fair. Zeke gestured up at one of the towers, crooked and covered with spikes. We had to climb down at night to escape. Only Nightingale had any fun. Nightingale smiled weakly. I remember that. Never climbed down a building before. I don't want to do it again. The Duchess is waiting in her throne room, bellowed a guard as they reached the doors. Fine. Zeke waved a dismissive hand. Take us there. She's the one we came to see. My dad's place is next, assuming there's anything left of it, Remy muttered. As it turned out, they wouldn't need to make a second trip. Malik was already there, bandaged but alive. There were half a dozen black-armored attendants mixed fairly evenly into the city guard. Remy mused that they must be on high alert for Aisling's next attack. Remy! Malik hobbled over to her as she entered, wrapping her up in a tremendous hug. At that moment, all of Aisling's claims about Malik seemed absurd. He might look like a villain, but he loved his daughter. I'm so sorry, Remy. I had no idea she was going after you. After all the threats she made, Remy pulled away, resting a hand on his shoulder. Dad, relax. You did your best to protect me. It wasn't your fault. I wish I could believe that. He limped past her, facing her friends. Thank you all for what you've done. You've saved something far more precious than gold or secrets. He shook each of their hands in turn, though he hesitated a second with Nightingale. Thank you for bringing my daughter back to me. Zeke was first to escape from Malik's gratitude, making his way to Grace's throne. Ramstead's Duchess had not moved during the display and sat with her arms folded. Well, she said flatly, I hope your escape was worth the trouble. We tracked Aisling down, but her crimes were too serious to try here in Ramstead. She's already on her way to Alinea to face judgment from the king himself. Patrick has assured us that he'll escort her the entire way. Grace glared at him. She looked like she was trying not to yell. And what about the hegemonics? Did you recover it? Zeke faltered before finding his words. No. We let Patrick take it to the king. Grace rose to her feet, shaking with anger. So let me get this straight. You four captured Aisling, then let her go with the hegemonics? Zeke took a step back and tried to retort. Well, Patrick said that. Grace shoved over her throne, looming over him. I don't give a damn what Patrick said. Aisling killed our best information broker. She tried to kill you, threaten your family, and you just let her go? Do you know what Balthazar might do to me if he finds out what we've been doing here? Zeke stammered, but he didn't know what to say, so he said the first thing that came to mind. What have you been doing here? Remy sensed the tension and moved to stand beside her father, even as a few of his personal guards did the same. Cousin, there's no need for anything so serious. Zeke retreated another step from the throne, raising his voice. I don't give a damn about Ramstead, and if you wanted my help, maybe you shouldn't try to lock me in a tower to rot. He threw his arms out. I came here to adventure, not rat you out to Balthazar. You misunderstand. Grace smiled smugly down at him. Since you're so determined to seek the king's authority, I couldn't let you leave without getting it. Consider your own crimes a moment. I'm willing to bet you had as much of Balthazar's blessing to leave Alinea as you had mine to leave the tower last night. Lady Duchess, Rook stepped forward beside Zeke, bowing low. With all due respect, we have urgent business. We are tracking someone important. If we stay, they might. Grace didn't let him finish. You don't have a choice. She pointed to punctuate. This time, every guard in the throne room came to attention. Arrest them, she shouted. The guards moved to obey, closing in a circle around them. Don't let her. Remy whispered, one hand on her father's. Please. That was all the encouragement Malik needed. Grace, he called, and the guards hesitated. Please. I think we should hear them out. If my daughter thinks that they have a good reason, I believe her. And if her friends have already done a service for Ramstead equal to any inconvenience they've caused. Grace stamped towards the edge of the raised throne platform, glowering at him. Be thankful your girl isn't in chains with the rest of them, Malik. If it hadn't been for her, Aisling wouldn't have had leverage over us in the first place. Grace probably couldn't see the way Malik stiffened. Not through all the bandages. He did not scream back, only turned slowly to look Remy in the eye. He spoke so quietly she almost couldn't hear it over the clanking of the advancing guard's armor. Helping your friends, does finding that this Theodosian mage really matter to you, that much to you, Remy? Remy looked up in time to see Nightingale's panic as guards produced irons to shackle them again. More than anything, she whispered back. She could imagine the death waiting for Nightingale if she failed, rotting in a tower until the Maluma consumed her. If they lock her up, she'll die. Please do something. Malik sighed, then nodded very slightly to the nearest of his men. They moved in unison, drawing their weapons and facing outward in a circle. The city watch responded in kind, though they were far less unified. Rook shoved through them, clearing a path to Malik and Remy. Guards in black armor closed rank around them, forming an even circle. Remy drew her own stolen switchblade and briefly wished she had something more protective than Zeke's coat. They were all armed now, even Nightingale, though the effort seemed to tax her. Hold! Grace shouted, seconds before the city guard descended on them. They all froze, watching her expectantly. Grace slumped back into her throne, eyes dark. Malik, is this really how this has to go? Malik stepped slightly between Grace and Remy. I'm afraid it is. Grace sighed again. There's a price for stubbornness, Moretti. She made a frustrated grunt, and the city guards all stepped back. Let them go. They didn't wait around to give Grace a chance to change her mind. Remy hugged her father again as they made it back to the streets. She glanced over his shoulder as she did, and saw they weren't being followed. Thanks, Dad. You don't know what it means to me. Maybe not, but I know how much you mean to me. He looked down for a moment, obviously deep in thought. When are you leaving Ramstead? Soon, she replied. We're going to make one last stop at Patrick's Dragon Arms for some gear, then the road. He hugged her again. That's probably for the best. Make sure you visit the house before you leave, please. Right. Remy returned the hug, then turned away. Until next time. Safe trip, honey. Save your friend. Alright, Gear Up, page 144. This one I do know of. So far I'm actually getting less out of this than if I had just let her gone splat. I'll say that much so far. I would have gotten at least one item. That's alright. By the way, that was the thing that she was about to summon, by the way, I think. Alright. Gear Up. You guys wait out here. I'll be right back. Remy strode up to the mansion doors, going faster with every moment. At least she would be getting her stuff back soon. The palatial estate was still in ruins. The door was missing, laying charred on its side instead of in place. A few flat boards had been erected in the interim, screening off the interior from the street. Good to see you, Mistress Remy. Mia bowed to Remy as she made her way to the room. Returning at last? You were gone too soon. I'm not staying, Remy called apologetic. I might be back, but not for a little while. I have to save her friend. She put on some proper clothes, collected her things, and tucked the switchblade she had taken into her belt. Then she turned to leave and noticed something sitting on her bed. She might not have seen it at all if it hadn't meowed. There was a box waiting for her, plain cardboard with a dozen little holes. A note rested on top of it in Malik's dense handwriting. To my daughter, congratulations on graduating. I wanted to get you something special. And remember you saying how much you missed your cat from Earth. I brought him home for you. Don't tell anyone. Love, Dad. Remy slipped the note away into a pocket and nudged the box. Gage? There's no way in hell Dad could bring my cat into Middara. Something meowed again, and the lid lifted a little. Remy reached down and tossed it aside. Sure enough, there was her cat waiting inside. Well, almost. Like her, Gage had passed through the advancement. His ordinary gray, tawny coat had changed to stripes, with white fur almost like a skull around his face. Gage hopped out of the box, sniffing Remy's outstretched palm. He licked one of her fingers and then meowed again in satisfaction. You remember me. Reward. Remy has been reunited with her pet from Earth. Revealed small hidden card UM10 and gained Gage, story companion. She also regains all of her equipment, which we'll deal with all that later. UM10. Draw. Alright, so this is Gage. Companion, Remy only. Exhaust before rolling for a dodge. If the attack misses, gain 1 SP. Really, the only thing I could see this being used for is if you're already out of dodges and you just want to get a stamina back. Or if you just want to take advantage of the build where you're forcing rerolls rather than relying on dodges. But it's something. So, also it's a freaking cat. It's that thing here. Look at that thing. It's adorable. When they reached Patrick's Dragon Arms, Patrick himself was nowhere in sight. Of course, they weren't particularly surprised. Remy probably couldn't have flown to Alenia in so little time, let alone walked. Charlotte narrowed her eyes at them as they approached the counter. You guys gonna buy something? From you? Zeke raised an eyebrow. Patrick put you in charge? Till he gets back. She lowered her voice, muttering, I sure as hell better get a raise for this. Okay. Anyway, he said you helped him out, so I guess I'm supposed to give you some kind of discount. Really? Sweet. Zeke's eyes widened, looking over at the most expensive items hanging on the wall. Charlotte waved a hand. Yeah, but you better keep that thing off the counter or I'll forget he mentioned it. Remy quickly picked up Gage and set him back down on the floor before they began shopping. For helping Patrick, the party gets 1 item in the following story round for free. This is kind of good, but not the best. Mainly because it's still this, because we're going to have another story round really soon, and it's going to be better. So we have access to all common items, all common item upgrades, all upgrades that have been unlocked, one random common unique item, which there are none left to actually grab. So we can't even grab one of those. And then all non-unique accessories and all non-unique items from previous tiers. So I think for the free item, I think I'm going to grab an accessory. Because technically those get more and more expensive, and I do want a cloak. So I think that's going to be my free item. So I'm going to grab a cloak, and I think that's it. We don't really need weapons. We're going to be upgrading to higher tier stuff soon. And as far as accessories are concerned, we can live without them. So yeah, our free item is going to be a cloak. So that's taken care of. Other than that, I'm not buying anything from here. Yeah, I'm just going to hold on to the ablation for right now. And I think that's going to be it. So at that point, we depart. So this is actually kind of interesting. Yeah, this is actually really, really different. I'm not sure if I would say it was a good way or a bad way, because so far the only thing we got, you get gauged no matter what, as far as I can tell. No matter what sort of blood you have with Malik at the end. But yeah, I guess we go to page 152, which I'm pretty sure is chapter 3. Yep. So let's go to chapter 3. Let's go ahead and take care of all of this at once. Alright, so just to show off the map, this was City of Valenia, there's Ramstead, and now we're heading towards Hyde, which is kind of the opposite direction. So maybe we can run into him in the future. It's a weird situation. Yeah, I guess that's it for Patrick. It's actually really, really strange. I don't really want to spoil anything, so I'm not going to talk too much about it, but yeah, it's very different. I was planning on doing something, but now it's completely changed, so I can't actually do what I was planning on doing. So it is what it is. Alright, in any case, let's I believe it was traveling the distance, but let me check. Did I miss it? Where was it? I know you're in here somewhere. Where were you? Story around 128. I didn't go far back enough. Yeah, traveling the distance. So it'll be 152. Alright, traveling the distance. A little rest and a little distance from Ramstead, and Nightingale found herself feeling much better. It would be difficult for her to recover completely while she was infected, but at least after long enough without the Maluma's interference in her mind, she could move freely and easily without causing her head to ache. The terrain became more mountainous and less friendly the closer to Hyde they got. Instead of gravel paths through the woods, they traveled on switchbacks cut into the mountain. I wish we had more time, Nightingale muttered, pausing to look off the trail at a stone slope not far away. Even at a glance, she started mapping out her route to the top. I would love to spend a few more weeks here climbing. One advantage of Middara, Zeke said, is that we won't be getting older. So, yeah, Nightingale smiled. I can come back, though. By the time we're done, I don't know if I'll want to. It might not be that long, Brooke said, gently steering her back onto the trail, as though he was afraid she might stumble off the path. The Theodosian mage is supposed to be here. It might be as easy as casting a spell and you're free. Nightingale let him guide her without complaint. He was making a strong effort to be a good knight, and she couldn't be upset for that. I hope so, she said, her doubt obvious in her voice. I hope so. Does the party have experienced guide? No, we actually don't. We actually didn't trigger a lot of flags. So, continue to proper authorities. What do you think Balthazar will do to Aisling? Remy asked, clutching Gage tight in her arms as they rested beside a pond. The cat was glaring at the water suspiciously, sometimes gently taking her hand in his teeth and trying to drag her away. Remy just picked him back up and wrapped her arms around him until he calmed down. Nightingale had removed her shoes and socks and was up just past her knees in the pond. Depends on how the hunt goes, I guess. He won't be happy we're gone. Rook sat on a large rock just beside the pond, a pile of flat stones beside him. Occasionally he would grab one and skip it across the water. It's open to interpretation. Murder means the gallows, but Aisling didn't mean to kill anyone, Nightingale frowned. Jophiel killed the informant, after all. Right. Remy reached down, patting Gage. The cat tilted his head, butting her hand. She took the cue and scratched behind his ears. It was probably for the best. I don't think my dad really did most of what Aisling said, but Grace wanted to lock us up just for inconveniencing her. Zeke appeared behind Remy, setting something heavy on her lap in front of Gage. It was a sub sandwich, wrapped in paper and thickly stuffed with meat and veggies. If prison is what you get for sneaking out, he continued, I don't think Grace would have considered the whole accident excuse. Well, it's not up to her now, Nightingale said. She splashed her way to shore, extending an expectant hand to Zeke. He unwrapped her sandwich before passing it to her. She took a few huge bites, trailing bits of veggies into the pond. A dozen little fish swam up around her ankles, picking off the scraps, and Gage watched curiously as their forms moved underneath the water surface. Balthazar will see what effort we went to so that real justice could be served, Nightingale said. Nightingale put a hand on her hip, doing her best to look regal. And he'll be like, you guys are so great. I've changed my mind about the Dimiad. You're all invited. Also, here's a giant sack of money. Good Balthazar impression, Rook said, saluting with a sandwich of his own. But don't you think he'll wonder where he got infected with Maluma in the first place? Nightingale tensed, feeling something nipping at her tail. She flicked it up and out and staring down in horror at the growing school of glittering fish. I'm not food, she said, backing towards the edge of the water. She dropped onto a rock and out of their reach. In Nightingale Land, Balthazar's just so overwhelmed with our heroics that he forgets to ask. Wrong voice. In Nightingale Land, Balthazar is just so overwhelmed with our heroics that he forgets to ask. Remy started kicking at the sand on the edge of the pond, raining dirt down on the grumpy fish. Oh, of course, forgive me, Rook pouted exaggerately. Remy, do we need to buy cat food or something? Near the pond's edge, Gates looked like he was ready to pounce on the unsuspecting fish. Nah. Remy picked another big piece of meat out of the sandwich, lowering it down to Gage, but the cat seemed too involved in watching the fish to notice. If we don't have anything he likes, he can probably catch enough food for himself. That little guy can hunt? You think that's safe? Zeke said, sounded disbelieving. As safe as it was for us to go out hunting at a murderer who can blow up people, Remy answered. And we did okay. Page 154, arriving in Hyde. Hyde wasn't much to see from a distance. Most of it was built from the same gray stone, worn smooth. The many buildings shuttered. Clouds of dust and ash choked the air further up the mountain, turning the sun brown through the smog. The city itself had a low wall, probably more to keep wild animals out than determined people. From this direction, a solid iron gate could be closed to keep the inside of the city safe. The gate was open now, with a handful of guards loitering around a small fire on the other side. Most seemed far more interested in the dice game they were playing than watching for intruders. A single guard made his way out to meet them, his armor constructed of rough, unfinished metal with faint glowing lines set into it. He also had an impressive black beard, with shards of gemstones and little nuggets of metal woven into them. Welcome to Hyde. He sounded a little annoyed at being interrupted. What's your business? Zeke stepped out in front, grinning. We're here to see Elias Hyde. We were hoping he could help us find someone. The guard raised an eyebrow, then pointed up the slope with the tip of his pen. The manor is the highest point in the city, he said. You might be waiting for a while to get in, though. Elias has been turning away visitors for days now. Why? Rook rumbled from just over Zeke's shoulder. Something happened in the manor, though no one knows exactly what it was. The guard turned away, clearing the road for them to pass into the city. Enjoy your time and hide. Don't cause any trouble. The man walked away, back to his open seat at the game they were playing. The city was packed closely together onto a handful of streets which ran up the slope of the mountain. Everything was covered with a thick layer of grime, and Zeke found himself having a little trouble breathing. Instead of lighting the cigarette he'd been palming for the last hour, he slipped it away behind an ear. As for the people, their clothes and mannerisms seemed very 1850s boomtown. Rough leather was very much in vogue, though it was sometimes accentuated with crude jewelry of dull silver metal. So does anyone know anything about this place? Zeke asked. The road was steep in places, and he had to watch his footing carefully. They have cranes that lift trade goods from the valley below into the city, Rook said, his voice dry. Zeke glared at him. Oh, you mean the cranes we can see from here? Thanks, very informative. I've never been this far south, Remy admitted wistfully. I've read a bit back at the Institute. Zeke could see Gage's lemur-like tail swinging from over her shoulder as Remy spoke. There's nothing up here but iridium and rock rash. I guess Elias Hyde runs the place. He's supposed to be the only Duke in Linnea that isn't an arson or young. Iridium? Like the element? Zeke asked. Remy shrugged. I guess so. It wasn't like Ramstead. Instead of blending into the crowd, people went out of their way to avoid them. I've read a bit too, Rook piped up as though he had been challenged by Remy's comment. Hyde's supposed to be one of the oldest towns in the kingdom, but it never really grew because of how inhospitable the mountains are. The ground's so poor you can't feed a family with 10 acres. Seems like there should be better places to build mines, Zeke commented. It must take forever to get anything from the valley with those cranes. Maybe, Rook shrugged, except this is the only place in Alenia, or even the entire continent of Haltis, you can mine iridium. It's one of Alenia's only unique exports. A pair of watchtowers were set into the mountain near them, and Nightingale could see the guards pointing at them as they approached. Iridium sounds radioactive, Remy muttered. It doesn't have to be. The isotope found in Hyde is probably the... Rook stopped speaking when he saw the blank faces of his companions. None of you care, do you? Nope. They answered in unison. Rook rolled his eyes. Well, the point is this is one of the few places to get it, so they have to mine it here. Selling it for reagents and pen tips the world over is what keeps the miners fed. It may not be as useful as other metals, but it is rare. It shouldn't be that hard to get in, Remy muttered, keeping her voice low. Your father appointed the Hydes. I know that much. You let them know you're here, and they'll roll out the red carpet. No, Nightingale and Zeke answered in unison. After Ramstead? Nightingale folded her arms. We're better off with a cover story. We're wise and distinguished scholars from Alenia or something. We can ask around about the Theodosian mage, and not get arrested or drafted as pawns in some stupid political game. Excuse me. Voice is failing. It doesn't make any sense, Rook brought up the rear. His eyes were alert. I've heard the Hydes are the most generous and hospitable rulers in Alenia. If Elias had closed his doors, something seriously bad is going on. Well, we have to get in somehow, Zeke said. Knight needs to find that Theodosian mage, and nobody would know more than the Duke. We have to figure out a way to talk to Elias. Yeah. Nightingale stared down at the street. Zeke followed her eyes, rough stone worn smooth by thousands of footsteps. He could tell which areas received less traffic due to the gray and brown granite that still had some of its chiseled marks. Well, let's have a look around first. Maybe something else will turn up. If not, we can always give up Knight's amazing cover story and just tell him who we are. Nightingale smiled and skipped up the street. Something else was bound to turn up. Story round, Hyde, 156. And here we are. So, we actually missed out on a side quest because we don't have Experience Guide, which is crazy. Needless to say, this is, like I said, it's really quite different, and I'm not sure if it's actually advantageous. I don't know if it's just a self-balancing thing, like you only get like the Experience Guide if you just didn't do as well against Aisling. I mean, I guess that makes sense. Showing them ropes is literally just a free experience point. It's only available if you have Experience Guide, and essentially the Experience Guide is like, you seem to be struggling against normal opponents. You're fighting against monsters, but things that actually think and do things, you might want some practice. And so the practice is you actually do a PvP battle. essentially royals against commoners, which is really kind of quite cool. It kind of introduces the concept of the bellicose arena, which they use the bellicose cubes to ensure people don't die, which is pretty cool. But unfortunately, we can't do it because we don't have experience guide. So that actually takes away an experience point from us. That being said, all we need is one more experience point, and Remy and Nightingale can get their 4th tier ability. As for our side quest, there's Distress Call, Patel family influences, and we don't have any bounties left. I definitely strongly recommend doing Patel family influences first, and then the Distress Call. Assuming you want to take the Distress Call seriously. Anyway, we do have a shop. So we have a new shop round. It's uncommon tier, so we do get one random uncommon unique item. So let's go ahead and do that right now. I'm going to hit shuffle once and take the top. Okay, so we have this accessory. This is called Organic Clothes. It gives you plus X health, where X equals the amount of disciplines you currently have. So for Nightingale, it would give her 5 health, which is not terrible. Unfortunately, she kind of has the quiver, so she doesn't really have space for it. But someone like Zeke could get, 4 health, or Rook could get 4 health, which actually might be the best for him. Let's just go straight for health for him, since he doesn't ever dodge. And then we have access to a shit ton of equipment. I think I'm going to go ahead and do the shopping as a separate video. It might be short, might be long, I don't know. But there's definitely a lot of cool things to look at. So until then, I am the Depressed Eeyore, and this was Middara. I'll see you guys next time.